Good morning. Put my face. Probably okay right there. So, we're gonna go over Jasher. And I lost my book. If you have it, give it back to me. It's got Enoch, Jasher, and Jubilees in it. So I've read Jasher before, but we're kind of going along with the Torah portion here. And Mr. Bob Skiba, as Ben likes to call him, Rob Skiba. I guess Bob is, no, it's Rob. We also got the Torah portion here. So we got the prophets and the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament passages that all relate to the Torah. Because the Torah is all about seeing Yeshua Messiah, Jesus, in the Old Testament, in the Torah. So we could, because I've heard somebody say that the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, is really just a commentary on the Old Testament, and it's true. It's very true. The more I study it, the more it comes true. So we're gonna pick up in Jasher here, and we'll cover everything else. Just give you a little bit of background. Where are we starting? Nimrod was the son of Cush. All right, well, I'll fill in whatever I notice is missing because I can't remember where I left off. So we'll just start reading here. I got my coffee. Maybe it'll speak in a nice, soothing English accent. You know, Jasher 11, like a nice, kindly father, just to lead you on through here. History on Jasher, yes, I should probably give this. This is the Zach warning. The Bible mentions Jasher in the Joshua accounts. It's like, you know what happens. You know, the sun stopped in the sky. It's written in Jasher. So we could think it was like a historical book, like Enoch was a historical book that they were aware of parts of these histories. And so they weren't going into depth. It's pretty much saying, like, you know what happens. We all read the book, right? You all know the stories. You know, it's like, no, we don't. We don't know the stories. But the Zach warning is we don't know if this is the true book of Jasher. It's not inspired. It could have been tampered with. Somebody could have read that passage and be like, well, I'm just going to make up whatever I want. And it's like some extensive making up if you read Jasher. Jasher's a massive book. It's so why we're covering it with the Torah is because it runs the length of the Torah. It starts at Genesis, runs all the way to Deuteronomy. And this one is a really good place to pick up because it kind of ran well with the two portions, but now in the third portion here, we go into Nimrod, which is the very mysterious person. And even in looking in our portion today, we'll see that, you know, he's not mentioned. He's mentioned. He's there. Oh, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love this. This portion's great. You read this portion back in the day, you're like, all right, yeah, that was cool. Abraham saved Lot and, you know, dicked around for a couple days or years before he got to where he was supposed to be going. Anyways, Jasher 11. And Nimrod, son of Cush. Cush in Hebrew means black. Some think he was the first black guy. I don't know. Black is my coffee. Still in the land of Shinar. And some people think Shinar was Assyria. Later on, Nimrod is referred to as the Assyrian. He has other names too. And he reigned over it and dwelt there. And he built cities in the land of Shinar. And these are the names of the 4 cities which he built. And he called their names after the occurrences that happened to them in building of the tower. And they called the first Babel, saying, because the Lord there confounded the language of the whole earth. And the name of the second he called Erech, because from there God dispersed them. So this must be after the tower. So it's actually probably worth going back and reading a little bit because it describes the tower. And it says that because he destroyed the top portion, God destroyed the top portion, and the bottom portion got swallowed up. And it's in a valley, so we might find this today because the middle section, it said it took 3 days to walk around this sucker. Yeah. And also, if you ever watched that movie, the X-Men Apocalypse, where he's talking about you shoot your arrows into the sky, they'll come down covered in blood. I caught that reference because I read Jasher, but I don't know if anyone else caught it. But it also might be in like the Epic of Gilgamesh. So I believe Nimrod was Gilgamesh. I believe every ancient culture has a Nimrod because we all came from Nimrod. So he's a big dude, and everyone kind of remembers, oh, Nimrod. Some Egyptians call him Osiris. I'm sure he's in Greek mythology as well. Anyways, and I'll keep throwing out stuff that I remember because it's early in the morning. I can't really think right now. Blah, blah, blah. because he dispersed them. And the third he called Eked, because there was a great battle at that place. And the fourth he called Kalna, because his princes and mighty men were consumed there. And they vexed the Lord. They rebelled and transgressed against him. And when Nimrod had built these cities in the land of Shinar, he placed them, the remainder of his people, because, not everyone's speaking his language now, so he's got like probably 1/70th. I believe there was 70 different languages that were split up, and that talks about that later when Joseph goes to see the Pharaoh, because he's only allowed to ascend up as many steps to the Pharaoh as languages as he knows. So Joseph went all the way to the top. Still, it's Jasher. We don't know. This is not fact. You can't take this with you. It's like reading a novel. His princes and his mighty men that were left in the kingdom. Anytime I read mighty men in Jasher, because it doesn't use the word giant, just think giant. It's likely a giant. And Nimrod dwelt in Babel, and he there renewed his reign over the rest of his subjects. And he reigned securely, and the subjects and princes of Nimrod called his name Amraphel. Amraphel. Remember Amraphel. I'm gonna write it down because it's in the Porsche for this week. The Parsha, sorry, not the Porsche. I wish I had a Porsche. Amraphel. Go ahead, everyone write it down. So that's Genesis 14 war. You didn't know it. There's Nimrod. He was there the whole time, hanging out. I'm like, Nate, come on. 6 verses. It's taking you a day. Welcome to Jasher, folks. Welcome to Jasher. And notwithstanding this, Nimrod did not return to the Lord, and he continued in wickedness. So here we go. A lot of people are like, we don't know if Nimrod was really a bad person. Jasher tells you, naughty boy. He might have started out good. Some thinks he started out as like a giant killer, mighty hunter before the Lord. He was hunting giants. Because actually what my novel is all about. My second novel is hunting the giants. Keepers of Shahar. So it would make sense that we'd want to get rid of them. God wanted to get rid of them. That's why he told it the people to go in the land and kill them all. It's because he didn't want these giants. Somehow how they returned. We don't know how they returned after the flood. Genesis, the other parshas tell us that they were there in the days after. Some say like, well, that was the days after he spoke this. I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Because where do we get Goliath and Og Bashan and all this other stuff? And where are they now? Right? So either went into hiding or we killed them all. That's an extensive subject. I know. I can hear the questions already. I keep losing my damn space. Oh, wickedness, teaching, and to his sons, and Mardon, his son, was worse than his father, and continued to add to the abominations of his father. Now remember, these guys were probably smarter than us, so they're probably doing some weird genetic manipulations and all this weird stuff. They built this tower that we can't even imagine building, which was just ridiculous. And there's another push towards they thought the earth was flat. If they didn't think it was flat, why are they building a tower trying to get to the dome, trying to get to heaven, if they didn't think it was possible? And even God said whatever they wanted was possible. That's why he stopped them. Otherwise, you're like, go build your tower. Not saying the earth is flat. I'm just saying they thought it was. Every ancient culture thought it was. And they were smart guys. Maybe they're smarter than us. That's all I'm going to say about that. And he caused the sons of men to sin. Therefore it is said, from the wicked goes forth wickedness. Notice we have sons of men and not sons of God, not B'nai Ha Elohim. At that time there was a war between the families of the children of Ham, as they were dwelling in the cities which they had built. And Shurdolamor, king of Laman, this is our war here. We're getting into the War of the Five Kings. King of Elam went away from the families and the children of Ham, and he fought with them and subdued them. And he went to the 5 cities of the plain, and he fought against them, and he subdued them, and they were under his control. And they served him 12 years, and they gave him a yearly tax. At that time died Nahor, son of Serug, in the 49th year of the life of Abraham. Abram. He's not Abraham yet. See, at least Jasher follows along there. I'm going to make sure I'm still recording here. Okay. I think we're good. We're good, yeah. Abraham, the son of Terah. And in the 50th year of the life of Abraham, the son of Terah, Abram came forth from the house of Noah and went to his father's house. So, yeah, Abraham was hanging out with Noah. And Abram knew the Lord, and he went in his ways and instructions, and the Lord his God was with him. And Terah his father was in those days still captain of the host of King Nimrod, and he still followed strange gods. Earlier we read last parsha that he was actually building the idols, and Abraham came in there and smashed them all, except for one big god, and he left like the hatchet in the big god's hand. And Terah's like, "What'd you do?" He's like, "I didn't do anything. It was this dude." He's like, "A god can't do that." And he's like, "Then why do you bow down to him, idiot?" But I guess they're still hanging out, father and son. Maybe he made a connection there. But he's still following strange gods, so it can't make that much of a connection. I don't know. And I hate giving off that topic, but Nimrod knew about. It was kind of like Herod knew about Jesus. Nimrod knew that Abraham was going to become this great nation. So he actually wanted Terah to give him his son so he could kill him. But Terah gave him another child and hid Abram, in a cave. And then Abram went and lived with Shem and Noah. It's a righteous house. The righteous house of Shem and Noah is called. So later it'll say the righteous house of Shem. It's the same as the house of Noah. Ham and Japheth. Well, Ham was worse. We don't really know too much about Japheth, but we know that some giants came forth from Japheth. Pretty much all Canaanites came from Ham. Naughty, naughty. And even Genesis alludes to that with Ham seeing his father's nakedness. We don't know I don't know if that was like a rape scene or what. It was definitely weird. Sometimes to see his father's nakedness means he slept with Noah's wife. Either way, not good. Jasher has a different version of this, which I'm sure will come up, so I won't even get into it yet. Keep rolling. I'm just keep marking here so I can see where I'm at. And Abram came to his father's house and saw 12 gods standing there in the temples, and the anger of Abram kindled when he saw these images of his father's house. And Abram said, "As the Lord liveth, these images shall not remain in my father's house. So shall the Lord who created them do unto me if in 3 days' times I do not break them all." Maybe I jumped ahead, sorry. And Abram went from them, and his anger burned within him. And Abram hastened and went from the chamber to his father's outer court, and he found his father sitting in the court, and all his servants with him. And Abram came and sat before him. And Abram asked his father, saying, "Father, tell me, where is God who created heaven and earth, and all the sons of men upon earth? And who created thee?" And Terah answered his son Abram and said, "Behold, those who created us all are within the house, the idols." And Abram said to his father, "My Lord, show them to me, I pray thee." And Terah brought Abram into the chamber of the inner court. And Abram saw, and behold, the whole room was full of gods of wood and stone, 12 great images, and others less than they without number. Lots of gods. And Terah said to his son, "Behold, these are they which made all thou seest upon earth, and which created me and thee and all of mankind." And Terah bowed down to his gods, and he then went away from them, and Abram his son went away with him. And when Abram had gone, so this guy's pretty deluded, right? And when Abram had gone from them, he went to his mother and sat before her. And he said to his mother, "Behold, my father has shown me those who made heaven, earth, and all the sons of men." So he wanted me to jump ahead here. I would pretty much ruin this story for you. He makes him some savory meat. He did exactly what he said. He puts the meat in front of the big god, and he says that they all fought over the meat. See, look, I'm saving the time. They all smashed it, and he's like, calls out to his father. He's like, "Hey, the big god did it, you know." And when he had done breaking the images, he placed a hatchet in the hand of the great god that's there before them. And Terah his father came home, and when he heard the sound of the striking of the hatchet, so Terah came into the house to know what this was about. So it'd probably take this dude a long time to make all these idols. He sees his son walking out. Look, they're fighting over that savory meat. Really detailed. Jasher's very detailed. He's like, they're speaking lies to me. He's like, no. Is there in these God's spirit, soul, or power to do all thou hast told me? Are they not wood and stone? And have I not made them? And canst thou speak such lies, saying that the large God that was with them smote them? It is thou that didst place the hatchet in his hands, and then sayest he smote them all. And Abram answered his father and said, and how can thou then serve these idols in whom there is no power to do anything? Can these idols in which thou trustest deliver thee? Can they hear thy prayers when thou callest upon them? Can they deliver thee from the hands of thy enemies? Or will they fight thy battles for thee against thy enemies? That thou serve wood and stone, which can neither speak nor hear. So I kind of feel like we get the same thing from atheists today, don't we? Just a little bit. Just food for thought there, since we'll be talking about a lot about what skeptics have to say about this. And one of the skeptics' questions, which I don't know where my skeptic's Bible is, but it answers one of these questions later. It has to do with Terah and his father. And now securely, it is not good for thee, nor the sons of men that are connected with thee, to do these things. Are you silly, so foolish, or so short of understanding that you will serve wood and stone and do after this manner? Oh, he's really calling Dad out. If it's my son, I'd be like, ah! I'm not that myself, because I'm an idiot, but you know. And forget the Lord who had made heaven and earth, and who created you in the earth, and thereby bringing a great evil upon your souls in this manner by serving stone and wood. Did not our fathers in days of old sin in this matter? And the Lord God of the universe brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed the whole earth. How did you forget this already, you know? Remember that big flood thing? I mean, we weren't there for it, but you ever wonder if they were like making it up? People like thought like, nah, there was no flood thing. It just kind of came in as one of those stories. Interesting. Interesting. Never had that thought before. And how can you continue to do this and serve gods of wood and stone who cannot hear or speak or deliver you from oppression, thereby bringing down the anger of the God of the universe upon you? Now, therefore, my father, refrain from this, and bring not evil upon thy soul and the souls of thy household. And Abram hastened and sprang from before his father, and took the hatchet from his father's largest idol, which Abraham broke it and ran away. He's a little brat. Righteous little brat. Righteous brattery. And Terah, seeing all that Abraham had done, hastened to go from his house. And he went to the king, and came before Nimrod, and stood before him, and he bowed down to the king. And the king said, What dost thou want? We don't know if Nimrod's a giant or not. I think Mr. Bob Skiba thinks that through some sort of messing around, he became weird. Jasher kind of gives us an idea, which I promised I'd get into when it talks about it. Just hold on, man. There's a lot here. Hurts my head. There's so much here. It hurts my head. And he said, I beseech thee, my lord, to hear me. Now, 50 years back, a child was born to me, and thus has he done to my gods, and thus has he spoken. And now, therefore, my lord and king, send for him, that he may come before thee, and judge him according to the law, that we may be delivered from his evil. So he's thinking the gods are going to be, ooh, he's fearful of his gods. Like some other religions that we know. And the king sent the men of his servants, and they went and brought Abram before the king. Now remember, Abram was supposed to be dead, so I don't know how it's going to turn out. Can't remember. And Nimrod and all his princes and servants were there that day, sitting before him, and Terah sat also before them. I think he's getting scared. And the king said to Abram, What is this that thou hast done to my father and to his gods? And Abram answered the king in the words that he spoke to his father. And he said, the larger idol that was with them in the house did to them what thou hast heard. Getting the narrative voice down now. And the king said to Abram, had they power to speak and eat, and do as thou hast said? And Abram answered the king, saying, and if there be no power in them, why dost thou serve them, and cause the sons of men to err through thy follies? I fed you. You've been fed. I am your king. You want to cuddle? These are my children. Come here, child. What is wrong with you? He'll just keep meowing if I don't love him. Okay. O foolish, simple, and arrogant king, woe unto thee forever. I thought thou wouldst teach thy servants the upright way, but thou hast not done this. But thou hast filled the whole earth with thy sins, and the sins of thy people who have followed thy ways. Dost thou know, or hast thou not heard, that this evil which thou doest, our ancestors sinned therein days of old, and the eternal God brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed them all, and also destroyed the whole earth in their account? What, you want love, now you want to go? I'm going to destroy your whole world. Hairs everywhere. Get my coffee. Sorry, guys. We're almost through a chapter. And wilt thou thy people rise up and do like unto this work, in order to bring down the anger of the Lord of the universe, and to bring evil upon thee and the whole earth? Now therefore put away this evil deed which thou doest, and serve the God of the universe, as thy soul is in his hands, and then it will be well with thee. And if thy wicked heart will not hearken to my words, to cause thee to forsake thy evil ways, and to serve the eternal God, then wilt thou die in shame in the latter days, thou, thy people, and all who are connected with thee, hearing thy words or walking in thy evil ways. Abraham's laying down the law. And when Abram had ceased speaking before the king and princes, Abram lifted up his eyes to the heavens, and he said, the Lord seeth all the wicked, and he will judge them. Pretty bold dude. Jasher 12. Sorry, I was feeling a sneeze. Well, it has not departed yet from thee. And then when the king heard the words of Abram, he ordered him to be put into prison. And Abram was 10 days in prison. And at the end of those sorry. Wow. At the end of those days, the king ordered that all of the kings, princes, and governors of different provinces and from the sages should come before him. And they sat before him. And Abram was still in the house of confinement. And the king said to the priests and sages, have you heard what Abram the son of Terah has done to his father? Thus has he done to him, and I order him to be brought before me. Thus has he spoken. His heart did not misgive him, neither did he stir in my presence. And behold, now he is confined in the prison. And therefore decide what judgment is due to this man who reviled the king, who spoke and did all the things that you heard. And they answered the king, saying, the man who revileth the king should be hanged upon a tree. That sounds familiar. But having done all the things that he said, and having despised our gods, he must therefore be burned to death, for this is the law in the matter. If it please the king to do this, let him order his servants to kindle a fire both night and day in thy brick furnace, and then we will cast this man into it. And the king did so, and he commanded his servants that they should prepare a fire for 3 days and 3 nights. So they're really getting this fire going, 3 days and 3 nights. That sounds like something else. A little Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego going on, maybe? In the king's furnace that is in Kasdim, I like that name. Steal that for a book. And the king ordered them to take Abram from prison and bring him out to be burned. And all the king's servants, and all the king's men, princes, lords, governors, and judges, and all the inhabitants of the land, about 900,000 men. So we get a number there. 900,000 men And that's servants, princes, lords. So you multiply that by 70, we can get kind of like a rough number of maybe how many people are in the world right now. I'm not going to do the math. And maybe his kingdom was bigger than the other kingdoms. Who knows? Stood opposite the furnace to see Abram. And all the women and little ones crowded upon the roofs and towers to see what it was doing with Abram. And they all stood together at a distance, and there was not a man left that did not come on that day to behold the scene. If you're gonna die, if you're gonna burn, how do they say it? If you set yourself on fire, people will come watch you burn. There we go. That's the phrase. Little life lessons from Nate today. And when Abram was come, the conjurers of the king and the sages saw Abram, and they cried out to the king, saying, Our sovereign lord, surely this is the man whom we know to have been the child at whose birth the great star swallowed the 4 stars, which we declared to the king now 50 years since. Ooh, so they found out. In trouble. Big trouble. And behold, now his father has also transgressed thy commands, and mocked thee by bringing thee another child, which thou didst not kill. Oh, I mean, come on, Terah. Use your brain. Use your brain, man. You didn't think the king was gonna find out? You didn't kill the kid? 50 years ago. He'll forget it. Which is a long time. I'd probably forget it. We just read it last chapter, and we're like, it's 50 years of like, what? 50 years of lies. And the king heard these words, he was exceedingly wroth. And he ordered Terah to be brought before him. All right, Terah, you're about to go down, I think. And the king said, Hast thou heard what the conjurers have spoken? Now tell me truly, how didst thou? And if thou shalt speak truth, thou shalt be acquitted. Oh, interesting. And seeing that the king's anger was much kindled, Terah said to the king, My lord and my king, thou hast heard the truth, and what the sages have spoken is right. And the king said, How couldst thou do this thing, to transgress my orders, and to give me a child that thou didst not beget, and to take value for him? Also was really like savage. When he gave him the child, he just grabbed it and like smashed its head into the floor. It was ridiculous. And Terah answered the king, Because my tender feelings were excited for my son at that time, and I took a son of my handmaiden and brought him to the king. And the king said, Who advised thee to this? Tell me, do not hide aught from me, and then thou shalt not die. And Terah was greatly terrified in the king's presence, and he said to the king, It was Haran, my eldest son, who advised me to this. And Haran was in those days that Abram was born, 32 years old. 32? What? No, because Abram's 50. 230 years old? I would say he's gonna have to be 230 years old, because Abram is 50 right now, I think. And I think he goes later to the land of Haran, if I'm correct in reading Genesis. We'll come back to that. We'll double check that. Hopefully, I'll probably forget. But I'm pretty sure Terah and his father were in the land of Haran or something like that before Abram left his father. It says he dies. That's the skeptic question. And hopefully Jasher will cover some of that, because there's a timeline issue. But Haran did not advise his father to do anything, for Terah said this to the king in order to deliver his soul. So he's lying. He's lying from the king, for he feared greatly. And the king said to Terah, Haran thy son, who advised thee to this, shall die through fire with Abram, for the sentence of death is upon him, for having rebelled against the king's desire in doing this thing. And Haran at that time felt inclined to follow the ways of Abram, but he kept it within himself. And Haran said in his heart, Behold, now the king has seized Abram on account of these things which Abram did, and it shall come to pass that if Abram prevaileth over the king, I will follow him. But if the king prevaileth, I will go after the king. And when Terah had spoken this to the king concerning Haran his son, the king ordered Haran to be seized with Abram. And they brought them both. What are you doing, Haran? What are you hanging out here for? So I guess he's not in Haran, his land, right now. They brought them both, Abram and Haran, his brother, to cast them into the fire, and all the inhabitants of the land, and the king's servants, and the princes, and all the women and little ones were there, standing that day over them. And the king's servants took Abram and his brother, and they stripped them of all their clothes, excepting their lower garments, because we got to be PG, right? Which were upon them. And they bound their hands and feet with linen cords. Why linen? And the servants of the king lifted them up and cast them both into the furnace. You're gonna die, but you're gonna die in style. Comfort. Don't want your wrists getting a little chafed with iron chains. Being a jerk. And the Lord loved Abram, and he had compassion over him. You're like, Nate, throwing him in the fire. This is an intense scene. You're ruining everything. The Lord came down and delivered Abram. You knew he was going to be saved. Come on. From the fire, and he was burned. Not burned. But all the cords with which they were bound him were burned, while Abram remained and walked about in the fire. It's not the first. Well, it's not the first time, but this would be the first time, as far as we know. Everything repeats itself. And Haran, Haran died. That's sad. When they cast him into the fire, and he was burnt to ashes, for his heart was not perfect with the Lord. And those men who cast him into the fire, the flame of the fire spread over them, and they were burned, and 12 men of them died. So that even the dudes that were just throwing him, I mean, remember, they took them 3 days, 3 nights to build this fire, so why they were getting it so dang hot, I don't really know. 12 men died just throwing them in there. So that's very interesting, you know. I think that has a lot to do with salvation. We're gonna go off a tangent here. Haran, you know, even said he was kind of believed what Abram was saying, but like in his heart he was like, and I think we're gonna have a lot of this, the Great Deception time. You know, everything repeats itself, right? People will be like, oh yeah, they're going to church, I believe in God, but you know, and the whole passage, the parsha today was about the circumcision. You know, not just of the flesh, but of the heart. It was all about faith, because the Abrahamic covenant was about faith. Abraham had to take it on faith that God would do what he said, because Abraham didn't walk the blood covenant. The torch did, and I think the torch was actually Yeshua. When God was walking it, the extension of God, Yeshua, was walking the blood path for him, saying that there's no way you can keep this. You stick your big toe in here, you're not going to be able to keep this, but I'm going to walk it for you. And Abraham had to go in on full faith here. So we see Haran, he's like, yeah, I believe in God, and I believe he'll do this, but he didn't have that full faith. His heart wasn't circumcised. So there's that difference there. Maybe we should explore that more, but it's a good tie-in to the passage. So 12 men, wow, dying. And Abram walked in the midst of the fire 3 days, 3 nights. He's in there 3 days. That dude's hungry. He's in prison for 10 days. They're probably not feeding him. Maybe they give him the last meal. And then, you know, 3 days, 3 nights. Hungry. I'm hungry just thinking about it. And all the servants of the king saw him walking in the fire, and they came and told the king, saying, behold, we have seen Abram walking about in the midst of the fire, and even the lower garments which were upon him are not burned. I thought it just said the lower, but the cord which was bound. Okay, so keeping it PG. Didn't want him walking around in shame. Makes sense. Yeah, it's also like what they put on him got burned, but what he already had didn't get burned. Interesting. And when the king heard their words, his heart fainted, and he would not believe them. So he sent other faithful princes to see this matter. And they went and saw it and told the king, and the king rose to go see it. So, wow, this fire's still going. I don't know if they're keeping it going or it's just like taking forever to die. And he saw Abram walking to and fro in the midst of the fire, and he saw Haran's body burn. I don't know how you see it anymore. 3 days of burning. And the king wondered greatly. And the king ordered Abram to be taken out from the fire, and his servants approached to take him out, and they could not, for the fire was round about, and the flame ascending toward them from the furnace. It's a big giant furnace. It's ridiculous. I want to see this thing. And the king's servants fled from it, and the king rebuked them, saying, Make haste and bring Abram out of the fire, that thou shalt not die. And like, we're going to die anyways. And the servants of the king approached to bring Abram out, and the flames came upon them and burned their faces, so that 8 of them died. Dang it. Cat hair floating all over. And when the king saw that his servants could not approach the fire, lest they be burned, the king called to Abram, O servant of the God who is in heaven, go forth from amidst the fire, and come hither before me. And Abram hearkened to the voice of the king, and went forth from the fire, and came and stood before the king. I don't know if I'd walk around there for 3 days. I'd probably just come out. But who knows? And when Abram came out the king and all his servants saw Abram coming before the king, his lower garments upon him, for they were not burned, the cord with which he was bound was burned. Sorry. In the temple system, Levitical temple system, linen and wool is what we consider shatnez. Interesting. So they would wear these special garments so they could be closer to the Holy of Holies. But Abraham's linen was burned. Need to ask Dan. It was Dr. Dan Baden about that. It's probably nothing. It's me thinking. I don't think Dan has read Jasher. He's not crazy like me. And the king said to Abram, How is it that thou wast not burned in the fire? And Abram said to the king, The God of heaven and earth, whom I trust, and who has all his power, he delivered me from the fire into which thou didst cast me. And I can even see people like being like, obviously they stole this story from the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they're just redoing it because they can't even make up anything on their own. Fair point. And Haran, the brother of Abram, was burned to ashes, and they sought for his body, and they found it consumed. And Haran was 82 years old when he died. I thought he was 230. Maybe he was 30 when he, maybe I read that wrong. Maybe he was 30 something when he told. Yeah, that would make more sense. Yeah. So he must have been 32 when he told Terah to do this. And now 50 years later, he's 80. Okay. Sorry. Cast him. And the king, princes, and inhabitants of the land, seeing that Abram was delivered from the fire, they came and bowed down to Abram. And Abram said to them, Do not bow to me, but bow down to the God of the world, who made you, and serve him, and go in his ways, for it is he who delivered me from the flame of this fire, out of this fire. And it is he who created the souls and spirits of all men, souls and spirits, and formed man in his mother's womb, and brought him forth into the world. And it is he who will deliver those who trust in him from all pain. So soul and spirit, that's interesting. And I wonder what the Hebrew here is, because we get the spirit and the breath we usually consider the ruach, or nefesh might be soul. They're a little different. There's different Hebrew words for them. A lot of the time we consider them the same, right? But one is the breath of God, and one is our eternal spirit, which is interesting. Got to study the Hebrew. Got to know it. I don't know it. Like 5 words. And this thing seemed very wonderful in the eyes of the king and princes, that Abram was saved from the fire, and that Haran was burned. Poor Haran. And the king gave Abram many presents, and he gave him his I thought I was going to say a 2-headed servant. I'm like, that'd be cool. Probably talk too much. 2 head servants from the king's house. The name of one was Oni, and the name of the other was Elixir. And all the kings, princes, and servants gave Abram many gifts of silver and gold and pearl, and the king and his princes sent him away, and he went in peace. And Abram went forth from the king in peace, and many of the king's servants followed him, and about 300 men joined him. 300, maybe that's the same. 318, you know. Why is this like not a blockbuster movie? Like not as this, because this is awesome. Why can't we do like the life of Abram? Like just do the book of Jasher. Oh my gosh, can you imagine the war of all the kings and Abram? I mean, you got the movie 300, but he's just fighting one army there, you know. You know, make Leonidas just more jacked, and then you got Abram coming down, you know, just kicking butt, killing giants too. Giants. Because they like the one giant in the 300 movie, the king, what is it, Xerxes was kind of he looked a little big. Definitely, they were definitely plugging that Nephilim stuff. If you guys pay attention, you'll see it. You'll see it everywhere. They know. Hollywood knows. We're the sheeple. And Abram returned on that day and went to his father's house. And the men that followed him, and Abram served the Lord his God all the days of his life. And he walked in his ways and followed his law. Oh, but God's so mean. Why did he allow Haran to die? You know, God could have saved him. Why didn't he do that? That's what we get today, right? We get that from like the Richard Dawkinses of the world. He's God, he can do whatever he wants. It's good. You know, he didn't have to send his son to die. That's barbaric. It's barbaric that he would do that. So we see this balance with God. We see he is a jealous God, and he requires things. And one thing I was thinking about like this is like forcing someone to love you, and like not just always forgiving your wife. If you're always just forgiving your wife all the time, and she's just whoring herself out all the time, and you're just, oh, just forgive her, you know, just forgive her. I'm gonna do everything right for her, you know. He's like, that's not gonna generate love for you. She's just gonna become more embittered and less. She's gonna have less respect for you. So this is about a relationship, remember. So we get to bring it on to human terms with people. Maybe that will connect. I don't know. There's probably a better example, but I mean that's kind of what we see is this marriage covenant relationship that is used as an example many times. So if you to approach it that way, um, you know, God is just and he does things in just ways. Things must be paid for in blood, and he even commits himself to that. So he can't break his own rules. He's God, he can break whatever rules he wants. I've had these discussions with people, and it's just like, yeah. And those are the kind of people you don't even want to, you know, let the dead bury their dead. The only time you have those conversations with people is if other people are listening, because somebody might be open-minded enough to receive it. Usually those people who are saying that, their hearts have been hardened. They're the pharaohs of this time. It's like with the plagues, and we'll get into that. You know, the first three Pharaoh was in on, and then God hardened his heart. He stuck him in his ways because that's how he rolls. So you gotta be aware of that, you know, especially when people turn on the faith. It does, I think even this passage has a lot to say about that. Wow, man, I'm sorry, we're getting way off topic. I hope you guys are enjoying this video. I hope this is helpful, and you don't have to agree with everything I said or anything I've said or anything we're reading here. Test everything, just throwing out ideas. And from that day forward, Abram inclined the hearts of the sons of men to serve the Lord. And at that time, Nahor and Abram took unto themselves wives, the daughters of their brother Haran. The wife of Nahor was Milcah, and the name of Abram's wife was Sarai. So she's Sarai at this time, not Sarah. It's changed later. And Sarai, wife of Abram, was barren. She had no offspring in those days. And at the expiration of 2 years from Abram's going out of the fire, that is in the 52nd year of his life, 652, behold, King Nimrod sat in Babel, so still got the city there, towers destroyed, upon the throne. That'd be a great find. I also think, we'll get into this, because I think the slime pits, and Bob Skiba mentioned this, that the slime pits were probably like the Dead Sea. So we know that's receding every year a lot. So maybe like these giant bodies might actually be well preserved by the salt. I don't know if they'd be like pickled or what. I don't know how that works. It's something spending a lot of time in salt, but it might be like the greatest archaeological find ever. And if we could ever find, like, if it really was 3 days to walk around this tower, there's got to be like some mountain. Just gotta figure out where the Valley of Shinar is and just find this thing. Or maybe they've already found it. Maybe they've already found it. 'Cause who knows what Nimrod was doing there? A lot of sketchy stuff because we didn't have giants. There's no way they can come back, and all of a sudden they're back. And Nimrod is naughty dude. Naughty, naughty. Put a little cinnamon in the coffee. Alright, and he lifted up his eyes and saw a man in the likeness of Abram coming forth from the furnace, and that he came and stood before the king with his sword, drawn sword, and then sprang to the king with his sword. And when the king fled from the man, he was afraid. And while he was running, the man threw an egg upon the king's head, and the egg became a great river. Who makes this stuff up, right? If this is not prophetic. And the king dreamed that all his troops sank in that river and died. And the king took flight with his 3 men who were before him, and he escaped. I don't know if this is the whole Exodus story here. I don't remember this whole egg thing. I zone out sometimes when I read, so it's actually good that I'm reading this like this, because sometimes I'll be reading like, yeah, egg in my head. And the king looked at these men, and they were clothed in princely dresses as the garments of kings, and had the appearance and majesty of kings. And while they were running, the river again turned to an egg before the king, and there came forth from the egg a young bird, which came before the king, and flew at his head, and plucked out the king's eye. Dang! And the king was grieved at the sight, and he awoke out of his sleep, and his spirit was agitated, to say the least, and he felt a great terror. Should we try the nice soft Irish accent now, just to change it up a bit? 51. And in the morning the king rose from his couch in fear, and he ordered all the wise men and magicians to come before him, when the king related his dream to them. And a wise servant of the king, whose name was Anuki, sounds Egyptian, answered the king, saying, this is nothing else but the evil of Abram, and his seed, which will spring up against my lord and king in the latter days. And behold, the day will come when Abram and his seed and the children of his household will war with my king, and they will smite all the king's hosts and his troops. It's prophetic, I think, of after the Exodus, Joshua coming into the land. So we had lots of giants at that time. And as to what thou hast said concerning 3 men, which thou didst see like unto thyself, and which did escape, this means that only thou wilt escape with 3 kings from the kings of the earth, who will be with thee in battle. And that which thou sawest of the river, which turned to an egg at first, and the young bird plucked out thine eye, this means nothing else but the seed of Abram, which will slay the king in latter days. This is my king's dream, and this is its interpretation, and the dream is true, and the interpretation which thy servant has given thee is right. We don't have like dream interpretations today. Like, we had such powerful dreams back then, we just don't. Maybe I don't. I forget them in like 5 minutes. Now therefore, my king, surely thou knowest it is now 52 years since thy sages saw this at the birth of Abram. And if my king will suffer Abram to live in the earth, it will be to the injury of my lord and king. For all the days that Abram liveth, neither thou nor thy kingdom will be established, for this was known formerly at his birth. And why will not my king slay him, that his evil may be kept from thee in latter days? And Nimrod hearkened to the voice of Anuki, and he sent some of his servants in secret to go and seize Abram, and bring him before the king to suffer death. And Eliezer, Abram's servant, whom the king had given him, was at that time in the presence of the king. What's he doing? Sound like he's serving very well. And he heard what Anuki had advised the king, and what the king had said to cause Abram's death. And whatever, said to Abram, Hasten, rise up, and save thy soul. Okay, because he was still living in the land. I thought he went out. That thou mayest not die through the hands of the king. For thus did he see in a dream concerning thee, and thus did Anuki interpret it. And thus also did Anuki advise the king concerning thee. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Eliezer, and Abram hastened and ran for safety to the house of Noe and his son Shem. And he concealed himself there, and found a place of safety. And the king's servants came to Abram's house to seek him, but they could not find him. And they searched throughout the whole country, and he was not to be found. And they went and searched in every direction, and he was not to be with them. Now, I don't know if it talks about it too much here, but and I haven't read too much of the Maccabee historical books, but Shem was a pretty great dude. He had a couple different cities under his control, and in the book of the Maccabees, Shem and a bunch of his dudes sneak into the palace and kill Nimrod, and they chop him up into 13 pieces and hide them amongst his 13 cities. And all the pieces were eventually reclaimed by Nimrod's wife, who was Semiramis, or we don't really get, I don't think we ever get her name here either, but she's the Ishtar, she's the one who had the Immaculate Conception. So I think we have like multiple Nimrods, and that's why there's some confusion, because we're like, well, he died here, and then Esau kills him later. That's inconsistent. Well, maybe if he was the Immaculate Conception reincarnation of Nimrod, they would have called him Nimrod or Amraphel, which is his other name. And the one piece they couldn't find was the phallic piece, which is why we get these obelisks, right? And who sits right in front of our big Washington D.C. obelisk on there on the top? Columbia, District of Columbia. She's Semiramis. That's Ishtar. Looking at the big penis. I think I just blew somebody's mind. Somebody's concerned about that. Nate's crazy, drinking coffee in the morning, couldn't find him because he's in the house of Shem. And I say house of Shem a lot, sorry, it's house of Noah. Later on, when you're reading, it's always concerned a house of Shem. And Shem lived, I believe, to see Joseph, but some of the timelines seem a little off on that, so somebody should, I know, actually, I think Zach's doing a great job with that. He showed me his chart he's been working on, which would be cool. We can get like a nice picture of that or video, that'd be cool. And I've seen a couple too, and like that seems different than what I read, so I'd like to compare. When the king's servants could not find Abram, they returned to the king, but the king's anger was against Abram was stilled, as they did not find him. And the king drove his mind this matter concerning Abram. I don't know what that means. And Abram was concealed in Noah's house for 1 month, until the king had forgotten this matter. How do you forget? I don't know. But Abram was still afraid of the king, and Terah came to see Abram his son secretly in the house of Noah. And Terah was very great in the eyes of the king. I don't get, how do you forget the dude that survived the furnace and that you were supposed to kill 50 years ago, and then you're supposed to kill him again? Must be divine will. And Abram said to his father, Dost thou not know that the king thinketh to slay me, and to annihilate my name from the earth by advice of his wicked counselors? Now whom hast thou here, and what hast thou in this land? Arise, let us go together to the land of Canaan, that we may be delivered from his hand, lest thou perish also through him in the latter days. Dost thou not know, or hast thou not heard, that it is not through love that Nimrod giveth thee all this honor, but it is only for his benefit that he bestoweth all this good upon thee. And if thou do unto thee greater good than this, surely these are only vanities of the world, for wealth and riches cannot avail in the day of wrath and anger. Now therefore hearken to my voice, let us arise and go to the land of Canaan, out of the reach of injury from Nimrod, and serve thou the Lord who created thee in thy earth, and it will be well with thee, and cast away all the vain things which thou pursuest. And Abram ceased to speak. When Noah and his son Shem answered Terah, saying, True is the word which Abram hath said unto thee. And Terah hearkened to the voice of his son Abram, and Terah did all that Abram said, for this was from the Lord, that the king should not cause Abram's death. Woo-hoo-hoo. So now we're getting a little context, all right, to how this parsha starts. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot. And we got Lot, the son of Haran. So, okay. So Lot was Haran's son, so he's probably a little angry at God. How come he didn't save my father? And Sarai, his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Kasdim to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, so there, I guess, I don't know why it's called the land of Haran, if there's a connection there, like I said before, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good for pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with God and men, and that the Lord his God was with them. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways. And these men remained with Abram in the house, and they adhered to him. And you got to remember, sometimes like these land might not have been called Haran at that time. Like maybe it was changed, or maybe like, because you got to remember who are they writing this to? Who's getting this story? Was this written at this time? Probably not. It was probably, I like to think everything was written kind of like in the 40 years of the wilderness. You know, they had a lot of time to write. So going into the land of Canaan around that time, probably when these historical books were being written, Ben was suggesting that Genesis was written by a lot of the patriarchs. Maybe it was compiled by Moses. I mean, that makes sense. That's kind of how it's working anyways. These stories are being passed on. I'm sure some of it's written down, it's being compiled, put together. So that's how it's going on. So so if it was named something else, it'd be like, well, that's the land of Haran. Oh, okay. You know, it's a strange land. It was like, it might not even had a name. Just be, okay. Yeah, we're living in this field here. Speculation. And Abram remained in the land 3 years, and at the expiration of 3 years the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee forth from Kasdim, and delivered thee from the hands of thine enemies. And now therefore, if thou wilt hearken to my voice, and keep my commandments, my statutes, and my laws, then I will cause thy enemies to fall before thee, and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will send my blessing upon all the works of thy hands, and thou shalt lack nothing. So this is the Abrahamic covenant, which we talk about in the Parsha. Arise now, take thy wife and all thy belongings to thee, and go to the land of Canaan, and remain there. And I will there be unto thee a God, for a God, and I will bless thee. And Abram rose and took his wife and all belonging to him, and he went to the land of Canaan as the Lord had told him. And Abram was 50 years old when he went from Haran. And Abram came to the land of Canaan, and dwelt in the midst of the city. And he there pitched his tent amongst the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and said to him, This is the land which I gave unto thee, and thy seed after thee forever. I will go make thy seed like the stars of heaven. I will give unto thee for inheritance all the lands which thou seest. And Abram built an altar in the place where God had spoken to him, and Abram was called upon the name of the Lord. At that time, at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in that year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram. And all the days that Noah lived were 950 years, and he died. Because remember, he's 600 at the time of the flood. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his wife, and all belonging to him. So we're looking at what? 450 years has gone by. That's it. Since the flood. So, a whole new world. Still growing. I mean, that's a couple generations. That's a long time. You know, how old is America? We're not even that old. Put it in context there. So it is a good bit of time. Doesn't seem like a lot, but Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his wife, and all belonging to him. Because they see how much we've grown in just a short bit of time. You know, think about it like that. It's like, how could they possibly from 6 people? You know, granted, we had more people to grow from, but it's funny that like our country could be just like a blip on the radar of history, just like this. And there was this place called America. The Koreans took it over and gave it to the Russians. Blah blah blah. And Lot, the son of Haran, and all belonging to them dwelt in Haran. So likely that he named it Haran after Haran, I'm guessing. In the 5th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain revolted from the power of Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, for all the kings of the cities of the plain had served Chedorlaomer for 12 years and given him a yearly tax. But in those days, in the 30th year, they rebelled against him. So I think this is a reference to what was going on before. I don't know, maybe it's a separate occurrence, but really much time hasn't happened or elapsed here. It's about like 3 or 4 years. So I think it was kind of mentioning what was going on, and then we went to that story, and now it's a couple of years later. And in the 10th year of Abram dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was a war between Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight with Chedorlaomer and to subdue him. For Chedorlaomer. Better get it right. We keep saying it. Chedorlaomer. I don't know. Was at that time one of the princes of the hosts of Nimrod. And when all the people at the tower were dispersed, and those that remained were also scattered upon the face of the earth, Chedorlaomer went to the land of Elam and reigned over it and rebelled against his lord. And in those days, when Nimrod saw that the cities of the plain had rebelled, he came with pride and anger to war with Chedorlaomer, and Nimrod assembled all his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men, and went against Chedorlaomer. And Chedorlaomer went out to meet him with 5,000 men, and they prepared for battle in the valley of Babel, which is between Elam and Shinar. We got 700,000. Just think about this. 700,000, 5,000. Let me read more before I say anything, because I don't remember what happens here. I'm pretty sure they lose. And all those kings fought there, and Nimrod and his people were smitten before the people of Chedorlaomer, and there fell from Nimrod's men about 600,000. So yeah, 5,000. Beaten 700,000. Likely these dudes were the mighty men. These were the giants. We know the giants were in Canaan. And it says, in the Bible, it even says the Rephaim. And the Rephaim were when Joshua was going to the land with the spine out. They're like, these guys are as tall as cedar trees. They're huge. There's no way you got 5,000 dudes beating 700,000. Kicking their butt. 600,000 dead. Mardon, who was wicked, more wicked than his father, is dying here too. Interesting. And Nimrod fled and returned in shame and disgrace to his land, and he was under subjugation. Now, could it be just, God's divine will? Sure. Yeah. They were giants. Subject to Chedorlaomer for a long time, and Chedorlaomer returned to his land and sent princes of his host to the kings that dwelt around him, to Arioch, king of Eleazar, and to Tidal, king of Goyim, and made a covenant with them, and they were all obedient to his commands. And it was in the 15th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is in the 70th year of his life. So a couple of years going on here, about 20, less than 20. And the Lord appeared to Abram in that year, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee out of Ur Kasdim, and to give thee to give thee this land for an inheritance. So he's in Canaan. Now therefore walk before me and be perfect and keep my commandments, for to thee and to thy seed I will give this land for inheritance, from the river Mitzrayim unto the great river Euphrates. There's the promise of the whole land of Canaan, pretty big. And thou shalt come to thy fathers, which the 1948 Israel does not claim. They kind of took some of it back and they just gave it back to Egypt. So I don't think that people is Israel. That's a deeper conversation. I think there's people from the tribe of Israel living there, but overall we got a lot of Zionism, we got a lot of corruption, and I don't think these are holy people. And it said there'd be a land of peace when Israel's built up again, and there's no peace, no peace there, no peace. Anyways, and thou shalt come to thy fathers in peace, and good age, and in the 4th generation shall return here in this land, and thou shalt inherit it forever. And Abram built an altar, so he's talking about Joshua coming back in. Built an altar, and he called upon the name of the Lord who appeared to him, and he brought up sacrifices upon the altar to the Lord. At that time Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and his mother and his father's household. And Abram and his wife and all belonging to him returned to Haran, and Abram dwelt in Haran 5 years. And many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram, and Abram taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways, and he taught them to know the Lord. In those days the Lord appeared to Abram in Haran, and he said to him, Behold, I spoke unto thee these 20 years back, saying, Go forth from thy land. What are you doing, man? Hurry up. Thy birthplace, from thy father's house, to the land which thou shown thee, to give it to thee and thy children. For there in the land will I bless thee, and make thee a great nation, and make thy name great, and in these shall the families of the earth be blessed. God's not going to bless you if you're not doing what he says to do. If you're not keeping his laws and his commandments, he's not going to bless you. Just because you're there living doesn't. That's like socialism. It's like, I'm here, I'm alive, bless me. You're God, I'm human, I'm here, I'm alive, you created me, you have to bless me. No, you do what I say, and you keep my days, and you keep my Sabbaths, and you keep my feasts, and you keep my laws, then I'm going to bless you. Not the other way around. Yes, he loves you, and he wants what's best for you. You got to listen. Now therefore arise, go forth from this place, thou and thy wife, and all belonging to thee, every one born in thy house, and all thy souls that thou hast made in Haran, and bring them out with thee from there. And arise, return to the land of Canaan. And Abram arose and took his wife Sarai, not Sarah, and all belonging to him, and all that were born to him in the house, and thy souls which thou had made in Haran, and they came out to go to the land of Canaan. And Abram went and returned to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord. And Lot the son of his brother Haran went with him. So Lot's coming along. Terah is not. And Abram was 75 years old when he went forth from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. And he came to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord to Abram, and he pitched his tent, and he dwelt in the plain of Mamre. And with him was Lot his brother's son, and all belonging to him. And the Lord again appeared to Abram and said, To thy seed will I give this land. And he there built an altar to the Lord who appeared to him, which is still to this day in the plains of Mamre. So it must have been a pretty good looking altar. To this day, we don't know what. To this day, I'm assuming it was written before Joshua, the book of Joshua, because it's referenced in the book of Joshua. So that's about the first time we see it. So if this is the actual book, right? You know, the warning. Remember the warning at the beginning? So it would have had to have been written before that at this time. So could have been written before. Well, it details things after the Exodus. So no. So somewhere in the wilderness time, probably after Moses' death, coming into the land has been compiled. Because we got that battle. They're still moving into Canaan there. I think Moses is still alive at that time, if I can remember correctly. But we'll see where this goes and how far it goes. And looks like we got a long way to go here. In those days there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding and all wisdom and of a beautiful appearance, but he was poor and indignant. His name was Rikayon, and he... Alright, well, we're going to stop here, 14, and I'm going to get some more coffee and I'll restart the upload.